Welcome and good morning. This is the July 2023 Friends of the Fall Line quarterly update meeting. It's a casual update focusing primarily on community updates and non-technical transportation related things. The Central Virginia Transportation Authority tends to manage those in their Fall Line working group, and we pay a lot of attention to that. But we won't dig into standard project agreements or major technical items in this particular meeting. We have a fun agenda today where we have guest presenters with Tool Design, who are our consultants for the Fall Line Vision Plan. So they'll be giving a substantial update and then have some facilitated questions, because we want to hear from you about your thoughts as we move forward with just crafting what we think is our collective best idea of what the trail corridor look and feel should be, not what the pavement should look like in this particular effort, but how will people use the trail? Where will they go? How can we brand it and make it feel like a place that people want to really use for all kinds of reasons and really integrate it into our roadway network? So I'll leave all of that to them. I just want to say that that's a big part of what our agenda is. So I'm going to start my presentation and go through some of the normal things that we cover here. And this would be a great moment to drop your name and who you are in the chat. A lot of friendly faces, but I imagine we have some new folks here today, as well as folks kind of just getting plugged in. So I look forward to those in the chat. All right, so things we typically cover, funding and project updates in a very casual sense. We have a lot of quick updates on trip and community engagement progress we've made. We've got the substantial update on the Fall Line Vision Plan and any other announcements or open discussion. Hope to be out of here in 1 hour. I've cut a lot of the slides out that I would normally share about CVTA and Fall Line updates at VDOT and Smart Scale, except for this one slide, because there hasn't been a lot of change, but the biggest change is that there was a vote at the Commonwealth Transportation Board pertaining to Smart Scale last month. And I think if we have David on the line from VDOT, our new bike ped coordinator for the state, or bike ped planner, we were chatting this morning about what those updates are.
Yeah, so we do have the consensus scenario that was just recently released. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for that. You can filter by district and look at the Richmond district in there to kind of filter down and see. Just let me know if folks are able to access that link in the chat. But it looks like 2 projects were included in the 6-year improvement plan budget that was recently adopted by the CTB back in late June. So for the Fall Line Trail specifically, the 2 projects are going to be, and let me go ahead and bring that up. It's going to be project ID 9001, which is going to be the Fall Line Trail with transit improvements over the Manchester Bridge, connecting down to Commerce Street, basically improving multimodal safety and operations along about a 1-mile stretch of Commerce Road and the 9th Street Manchester Bridge. So you can read all about that. I'm going to go ahead and actually drop the full description in the chat for both of these. But basically looking at about $28.2 million on that project. The Smart Scale request that was funded was $26.7 million. The PE start is going to start next year with construction starting in 2029. So tentatively, the schedule as shown in Smart Scale starts November of 29 for construction, and construction ends in July of 2032. The second project is going to be the FLT ART trailhead parking lots. This is the construct trailhead for the Fall Line Trail and Appomattox River Trail in connection to the Appomattox River Trail and Fall Line Trail. Construct a 27-space parking lot and approximately 1,400 feet of new 10-foot wide asphalt. That is going to be a $3.9 million project, of which the Smart Scale request was $3.4 million. Construction is anticipated to start December of 2029 and construction ending in June of 2031. So the total awarded amount was $30 million, and with the leverage funding from the localities, it came out to $32.1 million in projects.
Thanks so much, David, and welcome to the group. I want to say special thanks for coming to our Trailblazer hike last month, so thanks for that update. And I have a couple of other quick things. So maybe the most exciting, that's a relatively new thing, is just met with Phil Riggin at Plan RVA yesterday about them managing the wayfinding study. It's preliminary and has just gotten started, but they've selected a vendor, and looking forward to seeing what that process can put together in terms of signage directing people to various destinations along the corridor. And we were able to provide a list of recommendations that came from the Fall Line Vision Plan charrettes. Very preliminary suggestions, but basically identifying all the different destinations that were identified within a few miles of the corridor, and then a quick stab at which ones might make the most sense, and then sort of leaving that to the other consultants to really figure that out. And definitely identifying the opportunity for each of our locality partners to have a big say in which of those get identified, but sort of took a first stab at that. Phil, did I miss anything on that?
Sorry, I had to raise my hand. I didn't want to interrupt you while you're talking, but no, we are, the CVTA Fall Line Working Group is going to meet Monday. We have we're going to have the presentation from the consultant. I'm pretty sure it's going to be, I am sure it's Monday at 1 o'clock, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be on our YouTube page. We stream those, so that's youtube.com/planrva if you want to check that out. Or you can check with me. I'll drop links and stuff into the chat if you don't know how to contact me. But love to have people follow along with this. We are working with the consultant AB Design, and the wayfinding plan should be completed by August 31st. So we've got a pretty quick timeline to turn this around. So, but yeah, that's what I want to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Looking forward to that. And I do want to say, so that there are essentially 3 design build packages underway, and I say that loosely, being the third is very preliminary at the moment, but we've talked about this a little before. Design build is an implementation process that VDOT uses, it's relatively quick and inexpensive, in that design build happens at the same time. It's a little less back and forth between the private sector consultants and VDOT to build a process, or to build the trail. The design build 1, you might hear it called DB1 in some of the literature, is the northern section. So that has already been awarded to a vendor, and they're actually meeting right now. Scott Fisher, our project manager at VDOT, is meeting with them at the moment. But they are doing the preliminary design for the section between, we'll just call it the Hanover section, is basically from Ashland to the Chickahominy. So we look forward to seeing what that preliminary design looks like and how it will be built. The southern section, we hope that it can be go out to bid to a design build package in December. Now, I don't want to overcomplicate this, but we continue to have some issues around with the alignment at the southern end around the Appomattox. There are Native American remains, there are grade issues, there are some challenges that I think VDOT and company are really poised to settle. It just takes time to do this, and so we're just not there yet. But hopefully we'll see that on track to go out to bid in December. And design build 3 is in Chesterfield, sort of at the northern portion of where the southern section ends in Chester. It would be a continuation to take the Fall Line north from there. It is the least defined out of the 3 so far. But at least we're very hopeful to see that the big design build packages are already being prepared, and when they get awarded, they can be constructed much more quickly than other kinds of processes. All right, so Switching gears just a little bit, I'm going to show some pretty pictures of various work that sports backers and our partners have done since our last meeting in early April. Largely, there are trips and community engagement that we helped to coordinate and then supported for our various partners. The first two are trips that we took in April. They're the same trip, but to the Indianapolis region. To one of the model trails for the fall line is the Indianapolis Cultural Trail. Back in 2019, we brought leaders from that city to Richmond to do a full day workshop from their community foundation and from the Indianapolis Cultural Trail Foundation. And so we took a study trip of leaders from Richmond and Henrico to look at the way that the Indianapolis Cultural Trail was built. It's clear to say that they were very intentional about adding high quality features to make it a good user experience. And they've said time and time again, going back to 2019 and to this trip this year, that the quality is part of what helped pay for the trail in the first place. That we will, until the trail is finished, we will have conversations about cost and implementation, and it's always going to be a challenge when you talk about infrastructure. But a big takeaway, I know I've said in this format before, is they did an analysis of just property values along the Indianapolis Cultural Trail over 10 years and found a $1 billion increase in property values in just that trail in downtown Indianapolis. And a lot like the Fall Line Trail, they had a high quality urban trail right in the heart of Indianapolis that connected to what's now become a regional network of trails, but it started as essentially a connection to the Monon Trail that takes you out to Carmel. I have a couple of pictures of that as well. Carmel is a suburb of Indianapolis, and the trail that gets you to Carmel is a lot like the Virginia Capitol Trail. It's a regional bike-ped multi-use trail, and they saw the importance of both the downtown placemaking and being able to get outside of the region. And by all accounts, this trail seems like the best success story, and we should be learning the lessons that they've learned and implemented there. So some of the big takeaways here are this top picture, and this has been a subject that's come up a bit over our years talking about the Fall Line, is this trail is right in front of people's houses and right in downtown Indianapolis. This could have, I don't know the arrangement that it took to get the trail in this particular place, but we saw time and time again property owners showing ways to embrace the trail with public art, with signs, with visuals, and something that really I think is we can help encourage by encouraging public art and placemaking efforts, very in line with what the Fall Line Vision Plan is about. The picture on the bottom is what you think of as the typical crosswalk design for the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, and paired with the crosswalk and the very unique paver implementation that they use, it is impossible to get lost on the cultural trail. And one of the sort of wayfinding intentionalities that they use that I think is something that we really should take to heart with the Fall Line is how you implement the trail really impacts the trail experience, especially for people who are new to the city, new to biking or walking, people with low vision, and from a safety perspective of drivers knowing when they're crossing something like this has a major impact. So we didn't get lost. We led a trip of 12 people. We rode the entire thing, and it was we knew where we were at all times, and we also knew that we were on the Indianapolis Cultural Trail at all times. We met with their Department of Public Works to learn some of the lessons, but one of the wayfinding things that I wanted to share is they made these medallions inset in the actual concrete. They made them all at once, so they learned a couple of things about how to get them to stick in place, and just one example of really showing how a trail can be more than just asphalt, but it can be a really well-made, branded experience. Carmel, again, this is the suburb to the north of Indianapolis. This is a bit like taking the cultural trail and turning it into Disney, where they'd taken a huge right-of-way and put both bike lanes, a trail, car lanes, and a park right through the heart of their town. And it's a great example of trail-oriented development where restaurants, apartment buildings, local shops all had their front doors to this trail area, and the parking was all on the outside, which made for a really great place. And I didn't carve out enough time to show all the different pictures that we have. We'll probably do an update at a future meeting with all the different lessons learned in terms of signage, in terms of conflict resolution, really creating a place where people and biking and walking forward. But all to say, we had a great trip with folks from Indianapolis and Carmel met with us to tell us what they were doing to buy land and create easements and negotiate the funding aspect of building the trail with the development community so that it works for everyone. And it's certainly, from a business case, is really working for Carmel. And you can look up the stats from that city, but the median income and the property value benefits are sort of speak for themselves there. We have more to talk about with the charrettes, so I just want to say that we had 5 full days of charrettes in May with about 30 individual meetings. We met with folks from every single locality that the fall line goes through, with state officials, with community partners, neighborhood associations, other nonprofits, and that's part of how we got to what our presentation will be about today. It was a lot of fun, a lot of energy, a lot of really great ideas, and it was great to have Tool there to write down all the things that were generated in those discussions. May was Bike Month. It's amazing that it's June because it feels like it was still here. It was such feel like we're really back. We had over 60 events and 4,000 participants over in our entire region in our 10th anniversary of Bike Month. And we kicked it off pretty early with a happy hour with about 60 people at a local brewery to talk about updates on the fall line. We've got Dyrona Clark here, who's the chair of the fall line working group. We have VDOT, Phil here from Plan RVA, and actually kind of a new thing, we had the design build consultants for the Hanover section there to talk a little bit about their process. And this was, we got a little into the planning and technical weeds. This was kind of a fun, it wasn't just an overview. In May, we also had Henrico hosted a public hearing for their sections to give updates on the individual sections and construction updates, design updates, as well as some of the bike and pedestrian infrastructure projects that would be paired or somehow interrelate with the fall line, like a potential bike lane on Hilliard Road. In June, we had the Fall Line Trailblazer, now in our 3rd edition, and we led 3 hikes along the alignment. The 2 pictures here are in Bryan Park and the section in Ashland. And I think we had about 80 people participate, and a lot of folks were just learning about the trail, and they got or the potential of the trail, and we're just they were sometimes, like, we can take for granted that people know a lot about this because it's been talked about a lot, but there are still a lot of people who want to learn the basics, and there was a lot of excitement walking through Bryan Park, walking through Spring Park in Henrico, and then Ashland and the Chester Linear Trail. And before I transition over to our tool design group, I just want to give an update. This is a quarterly meeting, so our next one will be the first Wednesday of October. Same time and place, 10:30 on Zoom, and we'll make sure that those calendar invites get shared. If there is someone in your office or a coworker, a partner that needs to be involved in this kind of update, feel free to connect me to that person or to just forward this the Outlook invite to them. This is not a closed door meeting. Certainly, we'd like to keep it manageable from a number of people standpoint, but it's certainly an open door. And like Plan RVA, we record these and put these on the Sports Backers YouTube and on the Fall Line VA website. So happy to make that available to people in the future. And with that, I'm going to drop out of my presentation and let our tool design folks introduce themselves and start their own presentation.
Great. Thanks, Brantley. Appreciate it. So some of you may remember me from the last Friends of the Fall Line meeting, or if you were at the charrette, I was there as well. My name is Alex Kamutsis, the project manager for Tool Design Group, and joining me is Andy Clark, who I'm sure most of you know pretty well at this point. He'll be jumping in towards the end to help facilitate a Q&A. But what we would like to do is run through kind of a snapshot in time of progress we've made on the vision plan to date. So you should be able to see a welcome screen. I get a thumbs up if you can see that. Great, thank you. So Yeah, snapshot in time, progress we've made from when we kicked off a few months ago until now. We'll be hitting on a few initial tasks like our initial site visit, studies of existing plans and reports around the area, our charrette, and then some next steps that we've made to kind of start outlining what the vision plan document will become. So on the screen now is a welcome slide that we had open during the community presentation during the charrette week, and it really boiled down kind of what our goal was for the week. We wanted to hear from stakeholders and community members on what the trail can do for you. What kind of spaces, places, amenities, what do you want to see and would really, make you feel like you want to use it. And the trail could complement all the users and kind of the environments that it goes through. And then we also defined, what a vision plan is. Ultimately, it's a planning effort. It's focused on the spaces and places that are adjacent to the trail alignment. And it's important that it's an action-oriented plan, and it helps guide people through the ideas and recommendations in ways that those projects can positively influence the communities through which it passes. And then in addition to kind of that big overarching question of what the fall line can do for you, we had a number of conversation starters that you can see here, like how can we connect people to different jobs, services, schools, parks, etc. How do we advance community goals related to health, safety, equity, climate resilience? What types of parks, playgrounds, rain gardens, gathering spaces are important to you? And then there's so much art and history in the region. We want to tell that story. There's a number of existing planned developments through Green City, Diamond District, Reconnect Jackson Ward, and City Center that we want to take advantage of and discuss and figure out how we can make those connections. And then a bit about our project timeline. So here we are about in the middle of our overall schedule in July. We started in April with an existing conditions review. We took a site visit. We joined sports backers, and Phil was there with us as well. And we drove the entire 43 miles, which we have some imagery of in slides coming up here. And we really learned just everything about the corridor, the kind of the spaces that it goes through. So that was really a really enlightening trip for our team. After that, we reviewed a number of existing planning documents that kind of overlapped the corridor. We have some high-level bullet points of what we found from that study on the next slide. And then we led right into planning the Discovery Charrette in May, which was a 5-day event, and we'll get into more detail on that as well. Throughout this summer, we have additional stakeholder opportunities that would be virtual before we ultimately start to plan the plan charrette in September, where we will show draft recommendations and the draft vision plan that we would love to get all of your feedback on and your comments on, so that then we can go back through October, finalize it, refine things before it's ultimately submitted. So looking at the plan review task, we found about 22 different documents of plans, policies, programs. So you can kind of see that heat map on the right of all the overlapping study areas. And in general, most of the plans all reference the Fall Line Trail, and there was broad support for it as a safe, reliable, and inclusive multimodal transportation options. And that it's key to achieving the region's goal of a safe and equitable multimodal network. And then we went on our trail tour. Like I was saying, we drove all 43 miles and quickly learned that the corridor goes through many different types of environments, from more rural, undeveloped areas to higher densities, more developed, lots of hardscape, historical areas. And so we learned quickly that, the recommendations need to respond to those different contexts. And it was just really inspiring to see kind of all the different opportunities that currently exist along the alignment. Then we ended up at the charrette in May. So just wanted to highlight a few points on why we do a charrette. First is that it's a very open and what a great way for people to participate. We have everyone from stakeholders like yourselves, different elected officials, and designers all in one room together around one table, just having open discussions. And it's efficient and extremely collaborative. All the resources are present. It's just really easy to coordinate, and we get feedback very quickly. And finally, there's a sense of community ownership. When we get all these people in one room, drawing on trace paper and putting sticky notes down, there's a real sense of ownership over the results of the vision plan. So the entire week, we had planned out over the 5 days. We broke out the 5 days into to focus on the 3 different zones the trail alignment goes through. So on Monday and Tuesday, we focused on meeting with stakeholders in the central Richmond zone. On Wednesday, Thursday, we focused in the southern zone. And then Friday, we focused on the northern zone north of Richmond. At the end of each day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we had a community workshop where we had a brief presentation and a few activities planned to get feedback, and roundtable discussions, looking at the maps with trace paper and just marking things up and really listening as much as we could to what people had to say and what they wanted to see in the trail. Here's a few images of what that looks like. Brantley already shared a couple of these, but you get the sense here that it was very collaborative. So we had roll plots of each of those 3 zones. And so what you're looking at on one table is just one zone. So the scale was large, and we could see all the different conditions and contexts and places along the alignment. So very good feedback, and many rolls of trace were used, which we can show some examples of that on later slides as well. And here's a few images of our team throughout the week when they were able to get out and tour the site. They quickly found the same thing that we saw in our original trip in April, that there are many different contexts that the trail will run through, very urban and rural, and then some that already have this really strong sense of community ownership and art kind of peppered throughout. And just taking a little closer look at the 3 different zones. The map on the right shows the northern zone from Richmond up to Ashland. And so this is not an all-inclusive list on the left of the stakeholder groups that we met with, but just a representative sample. We had representatives from Hanover, Henrico, Ashland government organizations, from transportation, planning, the Parks Department, school district, and then a number of other stakeholder groups, all with lots of great feedback. The central zone through downtown Richmond, around Glen Allen, through Bensley Park and Bellwood. Again, here's just a sample of the stakeholders that came out. Beyond Boundaries, Chamber, City of Richmond staff, and many others. And then the southern zone from around Bensley Park to Colonial Heights and Chesterfield. We had Virginia State University come out, Chesterfield Chambers, and Petersburg, Chesterfield, and Colonial Heights government staff as well. At the community event, I mentioned a couple activities that we had. This is one of them. These were boards up on easels, where we asked for people to go around the room and kind of look at all the imagery that we provided under these four buckets of branding, materials, crossings, places to gather and learn, and amenities, and really let us know what what their priority was. Did they see one of these taking more importance over the other, or are they all as equal? Are they all equal to each other? And ultimately, at the end of the week, we left with many sticky notes, like what you see on the left, and rolls of trace with notes. This is just a sample of some of the feedback we got. But then we got back to the office, and we took all those and kind of put them into a digital format. So that's on the right there, and quickly saw some themes coming out of all of those, and some general buckets like that are on the far right here, with important crossings, destinations, historically significant places and events, different needs and opportunities, character and context changes, and then challenges and barriers. So this is not an all-inclusive list, but just some of the key themes under each bucket that we pulled out from the week are shown on the far right. For example, for important crossings, like the Appomattox River crossing, we should celebrate this intersection of regional trails. Destinations, Bellmead Community Center is a great example of a community resource that we should tap into and be a part of the plan. There's a number of historically significant events and spaces along in the region. Gabriel's Rebellion is one. The Native American artifacts came up at the south end of the alignment. And plenty of needs and opportunities. Heat Island and sustainability came up a handful of times, particularly in more of the urban environments where there might not be as many planted areas. And then we also noticed a number of context changes, which we'll talk about in a little bit here as well, from more of like a Main Street type feel to more natural environments to urban environments. And we heard a lot about different challenges and barriers that will need to be overcome. Willis Road has a higher crash intersection, Route 288, just to name a couple, but all great considerations that will be folded into the plan. And then boiling down all those sticky notes into a handful of key themes that we heard. I'll just run through these on the next couple of slides, but the fall line experience should be shaped by the context that it passes through. We want to pull from all the existing conditions and the feel of the neighborhoods and communities that it runs through. It needs to feel different than the Capitol Trail, and it should be a place to tell overlapping and evolving histories, and that sustainability and green infrastructure are very important throughout the corridor, mostly in urban areas. There's also numerous opportunities for trail-oriented development. Some of those are already in the works, and others, I think we can recommend. The user experience along suburban streets and arterials is critical. How do we get people to and from their homes? And how do we make the experience along more heavily trafficked roads nice and a good experience for everyone using the trail? And then public art placemaking, very integral across the corridor, but they will look different in different areas, and that's where we see the community really becoming involved and helping kind of guide that process, and making that section of the trail feel like something that they have ownership in and are really proud of. And then finally, there's a number of connections between schools, universities, different job centers that will be key for the regional economic development. There are a number of projects around and that are supporting the fall line, like our vision plan, the feasibility study, the design guide, and of course the wayfinding plan that Phil was talking about earlier. And so this is just a sample of the destinations and connections that we heard and pulled from the Charrette Week, and also after we did some of our own research when we got back. that we've been kind of working back and forth with Phil's team on, and we'll continue to do so to make sure that we're all working together towards one common goal to make the Fall Line Trail, an iconic transportation corridor. And so now we're going to jump into some of the approaches to the vision plan document itself. As I've kind of mentioned a few times, that there are these different context areas throughout the trail corridor. Those are all responding to different characteristics like city scale, the physical characteristics, different adjacencies, and cultural aspects that all make each zone different from one another in different sections of the trail. We like to boil it down to those as just natural breakpoints. So you can see some examples of that below, where through Richmond it's a little more urban, or the power line area where it's a little more natural, and we need to respond to that. So with that in mind, we looked at the overall alignment and broke the alignment out into 12 different character areas. And I'll just preface this with saying that these names and how we've come up with these is not final. It's a work in progress, but it's a good way to structure the document, the vision plan document itself. So our plan is to go through each context area, kind of bit by bit, and look at recommendations within each one. So there's a little more manageable, a little more bite-sized recommendations. And then we looked at some different typologies, trail typologies throughout the corridor. These are created by intentionally varying design recommendations in each typology, and they can be applied in multiple different contexts. So what does that look like? We came up with 4 different typologies. So shown here with the Main Street Trail, neighborhood trail, a scenic route, and a point-to-point connector. Looking at the Main Street Trail a little closer, we, in our experience, have seen these as being a busier section with the most diverse mix of modes and users, most destinations, amenities, and connections, and these are a destination themselves. They typically elevate the existing city street to a statement street and can be as busy as the adjacent main street. A neighborhood trail will have regular connections to a number of destinations and activities, primarily moves people between neighborhoods. So you'll see users of all ages and abilities on these types of trails, and they're typically adjacent to local roads or collector roads. A scenic route, longer distances between access points, just given its alignment through more natural areas. So you'll see preserved views and tree coverage. Typically, there's more recreational users and people that are biking and running due to fewer crossings and those consolidated points of interest throughout, and typically have a greater separation from roads. And then finally, the point-to-point connector. These are a little more utilitarian in function. Fewer design interventions are anticipated, adjacent to higher trafficked roads, and there are typically more frequent driveway crossings and intersections. But that, not to say that this cannot be as elevated as other sections of the trail. It's just there are typically some more challenges to overcome, but there are successful examples of point-to-point connectors being highly used and really nice transportation corridors. And then finally, we'll be looking at different design elements that apply to each of those typologies and context areas. This is again, just a sample of what those could be. In general, we're looking at these 4 buckets of amenities, branding and materials, creative connections and places. So, seating, lighting, canopies. How can we look at and use public art and wayfinding to really make segments of the trail respond to different contexts and neighborhoods and communities? We think gateways is going to be a really important aspect of the project, so people know, when they're entering one zone to another. There's many different artistic and fun ways to approach crossings, as Brantley was showing from the Indianapolis example. And then finally, there's a number of types of places, parks, natural areas that we'll be recommending and exploring moving forward. And with that, I believe Andy is going to take over
Yeah.
for a little facilitated Q&A.
I am indeed. Thank you, Alex. That was great. So I hope you get the sense that we, the consultant team, we came, we saw, we listened, we learned. I wouldn't say we learned everything about the trail, Alex. I think Phil still probably has forgotten more than we know about the corridor, but we have learned an awful lot, and have indeed identified numerous themes that we think are going to be helpful. And all the time we are conscious our mission from Sports Backers is to create a document that is going to help you all as the implementers, the ultimate builders and implementers of the trail, create something that is more than just a trail. And so we not only value your input in the conversations and the meetings and the charrette to date, but we're also at the halfway point. We want to know how we can make the document most useful to you to further the goals of the trail, whether that's to inform you or to inspire you, or for you to use to inspire and share with others, so that the funding or the development approvals or the process is facilitated. So this is a good time for us to ask you a couple of questions. I know we are somewhat limited in time, but we got maybe 5 minutes to ask you some questions. So first is sort of practical as well as philosophical, but what's going to be the best way for you to look at the draft vision plan and provide feedback, bearing in mind in part that as Alex alluded to, while we have identified a lot of specific locations and while the alignment is pretty well set for much of the 43 miles, there are still some sections in flux, and we're not sort of designing individual gateways or sections of the trail here. You've got design information, you've got a feasibility study, we'll have a wayfinding guide. This is really, to our mind, the document that helps kind of put the final piece of the puzzle together and giving you the resources to really sell the trail in the future. So what's the best way for us to design the second half of this project to get the most out of you and reviewing the draft so that it's a useful document for you all? Feel free to either put an answer in the chat, or to unmute, or to stick your hand up, although I can't see all the hands. So you may just want to unmute yourselves and start talking, and I'll manage that as best I can. Any
While you're
thoughts on?
collecting your questions, I'll just maybe reiterate that the current plan is to put together a draft plan that will be circulated. So you will see much more narrative and substantial thoughts. But is there anything in addition to the actual draft plan document to review? And again, we're not trying to change the alignment. We're not trying to recreate what a trail is. It's more what will be along the trail to make it a good experience, a high impact project that also helps other projects succeed.
And if there are no thoughts, then I will move right along to our second question. The question is always open. So if you think of a particular technique or tool or device or timing or way that we can most effectively have you all review the draft, this isn't your only chance. Shoot us an email or Brantley an email, and we will follow up. The second question we had is like, we are frequently talking about wanting to make sure that the fall line is part of and is reflected in all the other exciting development projects going on around the region. But there's also part of us that wants you all to think of the fall line as one of these projects, right alongside City Center and Diamond District and Reconnect Jackson Ward as a significant investment in the region, and it is. So what can we do? What can the vision plan do to help elevate either in your minds or your boss's minds or elected officials' minds that the fall line is a really essential public investment in the public realm that is going to help transform the region and spur development and economic growth and community development in the region. What does that look like in terms of helping you elevate the fall line as a project within your own work? Any thoughts on that?
I know that this is Kristen Burton here with Henrico County. I know that we have a trail or a connector trail underway in design called the Garden City Connector Trail that should be hopefully connecting Green City from the
Right.
Fulton Trail at Athens Avenue. So that's very exciting.
Yes. Will we have a map of the proposed fall line trail relative? Yes. And that's part of why the coming up with that list of destinations that Alex mentioned that we shared with the wayfinding folks. Like we also needed to do that, and it also came out of the week-long charrette because people were identifying those places along the corridor that we need to connect people to, and we need to make sure people in Green City know the trail is there, and vice versa.
It's fantastic.
So some talking points. Doug, do you want to say anything more how that would be most useful? Just slides, talking points, presentation you can use.
It could just be even just some, list of bullet points that may be helpful, more in different sections of the trail according to where that may be most applicable. But just like maybe like a kind of a one sheet list of some of the key things that have been identified with other trail projects and how they may apply here. And maybe that's even broken down at some point based on those different sections of the trail that you all were identifying. Maybe that's something that could be incorporated as you're putting that together.
Doug noted, we've got a one pager that's probably due for an update with some information that will be cooked up by this plan. Yeah, we do have some sales pitch type things that we'd happy to share with you.
Barry, when I first read your question about have visual artists been involved, my first thought was like, do we have one of those awesome people at the charrette who was drawing stuff as it happened, like capturing the meeting in visual form? But I realized that's not necessarily what you're talking about. It's more, have we talked to the artist community as part of the process of getting art along the trail? The answer is no, not specifically, but that will absolutely be one of the recommendations and one of the opportunities we identify for the fall line to do that. But we, as the consultant team, we won't be getting too deep into that relationship building. Brantley, you may already be well down that path, and I know you all have painted intersections and done other stuff and sections of the trail before now, so you may have a better answer.
Billy Genius actually helped do a mural a painting in an intersection near the fall line alignment in Oak Grove. So we've worked with him already sort of on this project. We did invite him and Susan Glasser, the Public Arts Commission lead, to the charrette. I think they were just unavailable, but as we have a plan draft, certainly want to make sure that they were apprised, because part of what we want to make sure we're doing is looking for site options, like where do they think public art could be installed, you know, in the short term, in the long term. Are there projects that are already in development that could be shifted so that some of the public art is trail side instead of being, you know, one full building away? So those are the kinds of conversations we want to be having. And again, like, I don't want to keep going back to Indianapolis without a full presentation, but one of the great things we saw there was a giant mural to Kurt Vonnegut. There's a really beautiful splash pad that's not just like a bunch of fountains or a bunch of hoses on a concrete pad, but it's like this beautiful architectural, colorful thing. There are some really interesting public art, sort of unique public art things. They have this dancing lady that's like a billboard. It's a digital sign, but the digital sign is just this lady. I think they call her Lucy, and she dances at an intersection. And that's really just scratching the surface. There's really tons of stuff. Maybe the last thing I'll say is the Indianapolis Cultural Trail goes under the Pacers Arena, and there is a motion activated light array. So as you bike under it, lights turn on and off around you. And so it's not, when I think about art, I don't just think about street art, but there's all kinds of other potential implementations, and I think there are a lot of big partners that could be involved.
Atiba, yes, we absolutely want to use the Fall Line Vision Plan as an opportunity to support and engage with folks who are trying to connect to the trail. I mean, and to some degree, the Fall Line will only be as successful as the ability of people to get to it and from it. And so the connections and the connector trails and the network that it becomes the spine of is critically important. The way that it connects to the Capitol Trail is going to be essential. That will give people such a unique opportunity to experience two different types of trails, but incredibly important local resources. So we will absolutely be proponents for spurs connecting to and from the trail. David, I think you and Brantley need to have that presentation and conversation about the cultural trail specifically. It is such a good example. There are so many lessons to learn from it for sure. So let me ask one more time. The third question is honestly basically the same question, but just in a slightly different format. Like, how can we make this vision plan the most useful for you? We recognize that, as I said at the beginning, you're the ultimate implementers of this. We are trying to think of the vision plan as a tool and a resource, not just for sports backers and their amazing work and being boosters for the trail, but for you all and helping give you the tools and resources that can really help put the Fall Line on the map in a very literal sense.
Hi, this is Laura Thomas from the City of Richmond. I would say one suggestion that y'all probably have already thought of, however, I think would be helpful across jurisdictions, is to show prime examples where we can work together on implementation, whether that be very specific pieces of implementation or ways to share financial burdens or things of that nature. That's always, a sticky part with these kinds of projects. But I would say that would be great. And then my other thought would be kind of a prioritization of elements within the project. So what things would be absolutely necessary for us to achieve that vision? And then what elements could be additive later as opportunities arise, but wouldn't be critical to creating that overall outcome that we're intending to create. But great work so far. Looking forward to this.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we got to your first point. I think we got some good examples during the charrette of how the process is helping to generate some of those conversations. Alex, I think you left by this point, but in the northern section, we had a really good conversation when the Hanover and Henrico folks got together and started talking about all the connections that needed to happen around the boundary of the two jurisdictions. Similar conversations will absolutely be happening around Bryant Park as we cross over into Henrico. So yeah, good suggestions. Thank you. I'm struggling a little bit to keep up with the, you would think after 3 years of being on Zoom almost constantly that I would have figured out cameras and stuff, but getting a new pair of glasses that has trifocals in a different spot means I feel like I'm being very aloof and professorial by sort of looking down my nose at y'all. I'm just trying to read the damn screen. So yeah, so those are the questions we had. Any thoughts that you have between now and September, when we will be back with you all, and the team, Alex and Cindy and others will be back to sort of present the draft and get the next round of feedback from you all. If you have any thoughts on the best way we can do that, the most useful way we can do that for you all, please let us have that. Let us have those suggestions. You know where to reach us, you know where to reach Brantley, and we're in constant contact. So I will close there.
Thanks, Andy and Alex, and thanks everyone for the discussion. I think that we definitely got some great ones towards the end there in terms of we do want this plan to be actionable. We are working with at least 8 stakeholder or government stakeholder partners, and in some ways many more. And yeah, part of the value that we want to bring with this effort is shortening the distance between action and being able to implement individual elements. And so funding, as you mentioned, Laura, is definitely a big part of it, but even just consensus on what the first step is on a particular element is valuable. And I do want to highlight a couple of examples about how this has helped shape those character zones or context zones and understanding the kind of different look and feel along the different corridor. We started talking about public art and particularly like the higher level implementations like corporate level art. And I was sitting at a table with County Administrator Badesky in Hanover, and I was like, what are the public art potential opportunities in your section? It's like, when I think about corporate art, I think about the Bean in Chicago, and I was like, what's the Bean in Hanover? And it's like, is it a chrome tomato? How cool would that be? And he was like, well, I think that'd be cool, but I'm not sure that would fit the rural character that we think would really highlight our section. And I said, totally get it. We don't have to force the chrome tomato on anybody. You can quote me, but if we can get agreement on some actionable ideas, like it would be great for there to be a mural park in this particular area, or it would be great to have an outdoor classroom with solar panels. And like you talk to whole different groups of people for fundraising, and we're very much potentially looking at implementation on private property. So it doesn't all have to be in the public domain. Really great opportunities for public-private partnerships. And in some ways, I would imagine we will be facilitating some of that fundraising and the agreements made on a parcel by parcel basis. Some might be big, some might be small, some might be totally out of our hands, but otherwise helping to kind of craft an idea that can live on its own. So this is an iterative process, and certainly this presentation will be on our YouTube page, hopefully by the end of the day. And feel free to reach out to Alex and me if you have any questions or ideas. Certainly there's time to add. All right, well, our next meeting will be in October, and thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your morning.